All right, we're live. Stop.
How is it supposed to be? I don't know.
Your whole generation, you all know how to use it.
I open up OBS.
I'm using OBS. There's a native recording function.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, it's pretty cool actually.
You don't even have to do the stream here.
Just right through YouTube itself, YouTube Studio. That's pretty cool. Anyway, Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, they're the same book. Does anybody have Song of Solomon? Anybody have Song of Songs?
Song of songs or songs?
Yes.
Song of songs.
S-O-N-G-S.
Okay, it's literally simple.
I know. There's no songs. No P-S-A-L-M-S. Okay. Song of Solomon. Well, yeah, 20 chapters. We're not going to spend a lot of time in it. It's an interesting book. So we're getting to the end of the wisdom literature. We got 3 books left in this chapter, or in this unit, and then we're going to move on to the next unit, the last unit, which is on the prophets, which you all, I hope, are diligently working on. Oh, before we get started, too, congratulations goes out to Bishop Boyer, our bishop here in the Diocese of Lansing. He was just elected by the USCCB to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops to the chair on clergy, consecrated life, and religious life, something like that. Pretty high position in the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Don't ask me what that committee actually does, because I don't know. I actually kind of want to ask him that. But he was elected, and there's like 5 positions like that that are pretty high up, if he's one of them. So nice one. Congratulations, Bishop Boyer.
Oh, in my mind.
Nice job. Great.
2 things. One of them is gonna sound like what is it like do? What is the other titles like?
So there's like one on, there's a chairperson on justice. There's one on,
So it's like targeting a specific.
yeah, so it's a committee on clergy, religious life, and consecrated life.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a committee on the vocation of a religious vocation,
Okay.
which is pretty cool. So good on Bishop Boyer. Pretty cool. I don't know what they actually do in the committee. I do want to ask him that, but
How long has he been a bishop?
he is back. Oh, yeah, I have to put him on the spot.
Before I was born. Know that.
So I think I was in high school when he was made bishop, so 2005 maybe,
Oh, I was.
I was alive.
somewhere there.
I was
5 or 6, somewhere there. He's 70 years old right now.
Oh my.
I think he's 70.
So he was when he was like 50 something.
This was he was an auxiliary bishop in Detroit first. This is his first diocese. He's the bishop. So, all right. Song of Solomon. One other note too. Dang, sorry. Since we're at the very end of the unit here, by the end of the week, I'll have a study guide out to you. And it seems to me if the calendar sits right, Tuesday of the week after Thanksgiving will be the test. Tuesday, the week after Thanksgiving will be the test. And I would like to push it off further, but I can't because maybe I can. We'll see. I'm kind of flexible on it. I'm not going to be here for the first, second, and third, so this Thursday, Friday, the week after Thanksgiving, because there's like a 90% chance I'm going to Kairos. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to Kairos. I haven't been like for sure cemented, but that means I'm not going to be here for 3 days. So the Tuesday before I'll do the test.
Will we send work on a progress project in class?
Yeah, so if I'm gone for those 3 days, that's probably what we'll be doing. Is that project. At least for probably a couple of those days, maybe I'll lecture one of them, make a video lecture. But in fact, that's what I'll do. I'll probably end up on the first day, give an example of this project, and then send you guys off to your projects for the next 2 days. Something like that. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But just a heads up on where we're going. All right, Song of Solomon. So, remember at the very beginning of the school year, of the semester, we listed off a whole bunch of genres of scripture. What's a genre?
A type of literature.
Yes. So like the different type, all the different types of literature. So what's an example?
Historical.
Historical narrative is an example. Poems is an example.
I just slipped my mind. Mythology.
Mythology is another one.
Letters.
Letters. Apocrypha. Apocalyptic. Yes, very good.
Novellas.
Sorry.
Novellas.
Novellas. Very good. So, a whole bunch of them, right? And I don't remember, it was during the day at some point, and I know it wasn't the 8 hour, but maybe you guys were the ones who mentioned it. But somebody, when we were listing them off and guessing and trying to make a full list, somebody said romance. Yeah. Today we get the romance book.
Is this the only romance book?
At least that would be categorized as a romance
Is
book.
that a love story between him and God or between him and girl?
Can it be both?
It can.
Yes.
Good.
Good.
Not this again.
The image of love between bride and bridegroom can be seen as the love between God and the faithful Jews, between God and us. And traditionally, that image, that reflection has been used to describe a relationship with God, is the marital relationship. So this book is really directed to faithful Jews who are living in the land of Judah after the exile. So we see all the trauma that happens in the exile, the real broken relationship between God and his people during the time of the kingdom, right? We see all these bad kings. You guys looked at all of those kings and saw how bad they are and how far they stray from God and our relationship with them, basically breaking our relationship with God. And so the exile happens, and then we finally return from the exile 70 years later. And the people want to restore that relationship they have with God. They want to restore that. And so this book is written for those in exile and those leaving exile looking to restore that relationship with God. This is a unique book. It's a very unique book. It's a poem of human love that makes no explicit mention of God. God is not mentioned at all in this book. Right?
What's in the Bible?
Right? That's a good question. Why is it in the Bible? So, throughout the entire history, tradition, from the moment this book was written, it was understood that this book is not just talking about human relationships, but on a deeper level, it's talking about a relationship with God. It's both at the same time, just like you said. Talking about a relationship with God and through the context of a human relationship. It's always been seen as an allegory about the love of God and his people. So, of course, love is from God. True human love, which is part of God's plan of all people, is a reflection of that divine love that God has for us. So, what was the first sacrament that was created? The first sacrament that was created?
Eucharist.
Nope.
Reconciliation.
Confession.
Marriage. Matrimony.
Can you explain why it's the first one?
Because marriage was, Adam and Eve.
There you go. Right? Adam and Eve were a married couple. God creates them as a married couple in the state of marriage, a faithful and indissoluble union, a union that cannot be dissolved, through which new life springs. That love, that reflection of the love between the two of them is a reflection of the love that God has for us and we should have for God. So, we see this image also used in the New Testament, but used in a different way. Not so much about the relationship between us and God, although that's implied, but it takes on another dimension with Jesus and
The cross.
who's the bride of Jesus?
The church.
The church. The church is the bride of Jesus, which is one of the reasons why I'm in persona Christi, in the person of Christ. So my love and fidelity is for the church.
That's really cool.
I know, isn't it?
You are married to not to person.
That's the idea.
Oh, is that what you're
Yes, it is.
You explained that right.
I did.
Or like, when you said someone, I think someone asked that, or did you just?
I may have just said it too. I think somebody may have asked at the hour, they probably did the
I
hour.
was gonna ask that, hey, sure.
Yep, that's why we're at. sign of love and fidelity. So even in the marriage rite, the priest blesses the rings, and when they give it to each other, take this as a sign of my love and fidelity. That's what each couple says, each person says to the other. Take this as a sign of my love and fidelity.
Does God also have it? I know that's a weird question, but like, do you guys like have like
It's very
rings
spirit.
and like you just put it
No.
somewhere?
The one ring to rule them all.
I'll just look at that.
Would
Oh,
it be cool to be
I
married
want
in like
one.
a church, like in Rome or something? Wouldn't that be really cool?
Churches are all beautiful. They're all
That's what
incredible.
I wanna do.
that'd be cool.
That's the goal.
If all the.
It's hard to do, but you get it. In fact, there is a way, I've seen this happen. I've seen people get married in a side chapel in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome.
No.
Yeah, so you have to be okay with like a bunch of randos being there. But as we were walking to St. Peter's one day, we saw the wedding procession out after they just got married in St. Peter's, which is really cool.
I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but is it possible to be married in a Sistine Chapel?
Not that I know of.
I've never heard of it.
It'd be cool if like you and all your priest friends that had rings, but they were like built in walkie-talkies, so you could like.
That would be pretty cool. I
They
don't know.
would be
Let's
blessed,
remind we're recording today.
they would be blessed
Oh,
walking
shoot,
up.
my bad.
Built in walkie-talkies, okay, so that's
Yeah, actually.
so that's our random thought of the day. Great, Max, you took your random thought of the day.
You should write that down.
We're going to get one random thought of the day that you took inside.
Thanks.
All right. Chapter 1,
I really thought it was the.
chapter 1. Chapter 1. And I'm just going to read a little bit, this will give you a little taste of what the book is like. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Oh, that you would kiss me with the kisses of your mouth, for your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant, your name is oil poured out. Therefore the maidens love you. Draw me after you, let us make haste. The king has brought me into his chambers. We will exalt and rejoice in you. We will extol your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. Really, I was going to say, the thing that really stands out to me is this person must really love wine. She
The
mentioned
fact
it
that they
twice.
love her more than I is just like,
That's like the real deal.
Wait,
right?
didn't
Yeah.
Solomon have like
it's like you and
300 wives or something? So isn't that 600,
Well,
700, 6,000? I don't know.
Lower.
1,600.
Wait, why is this Solomon's?
1,000.
So.
Yeah, exactly. He had a lot of wives.
So this is a good transition into the next book we're going to talk about. So that's all we're going to talk about, the Song of Solomon. Feel free to read it on your own if you'd like.
Is it a good book to read?
Go for it.
You just read the first three verses in that.
And that's what the book, that's the entire book, is like that. It continues on just like that the entire rest of the book. So go for it. I want to get into the Wisdom of Solomon, which is the very next book. Why are these two books attributed to Solomon?
Because he's the last king, right?
Well, it's not the last
Because
king.
he's wise.
Why is he wise?
Because God gave him wisdom. Because he asked for wisdom when.
That's why.
And he had a
Hey.
lot of wives.
You need to raise your hand and I call on you. That's David, that's not Solomon. David is a man after God's own heart.
One thing in this kind of gives me that you would kiss me with the kisses of your mouth. That's just like.
It's a very,
Is it kissing with kissing of your mouth? Isn't that what they?
it's poetic language.
It's very poetic.
Very
So
poetic.
much.
It may translate, that line may not be translated super great. Yeah, it may sound strange in English. Might not sound so strange in Hebrew.
So this book is about Solomon, or book of book of wisdom.
So we're moving into Wisdom of Solomon. That should be the next book.
When was this read?
All right, great question. All right, so we need to talk about the historical nature. So we're talking about why these books are attributed to Solomon because of wisdom, right? He's known as the wisest king, but did he write these books? Unlikely. They're very much, Wisdom of Solomon definitely wasn't. But it was attributed to him because he's known as the wisest king. So you want to attribute something to someone who is wise.
I'm wrong. Mine says it was written about 50 years before the coming of Christ.
I think it was earlier than that. From what I've seen, it seems earlier than that. So I'm thinking about 150, 200 years before the coming of Christ. Somewhere in that area seems more likely to me. Probably right around the end of the return, the beginning of the Maccabean revolt.
I forgot. Did Solomon ask for wisdom just for him or for him and future kings?
So no, good question. So God asks him, the remember the story, God asked him, hey, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Solomon says, I want wisdom to rule my people well. Really asking for sorry. So, wisdom to rule my people well. Which is good. These are bad things. Alright, so this book is attributed to Solomon, but I think it's more like 150 years before the coming of Christ. It was directed to, and this is why I think it was written earlier, it was directed to Hellenized Jews in what's called the diaspora. And I don't think we've used that word before. D-I-A-S-P-O-R-A. Diaspora. First let's talk about Hellenized Jews. What does it mean to be a Hellenized Jew? What is Hellenization? Yes, great. So remember, the Greeks didn't exile the people, they imposed their culture on the peoples that they conquered. And so they were trying to make the land of Israel Greek.
Hellenic has the word Hellenic,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that.
Greek translation. The Greek translation of Hell is Hades.
Which of the Greek, like, moved where they were, and put their book.
They just imposed their culture on the lands that they had conquered. Yes. Romans did a lot of did that too. They tried to make every place that they were at Roman.
I thought I was just.
Well, they killed a lot of people too.
Yeah.
But the people that weren't killed, they made Roman subjects and made Roman culture. So we see the Greeks doing this, and so this is for Hellenized Jews of what's called the diaspora. So the diaspora is a word we have not used yet. It is the dispersion of the Jews among the Gentiles outside the land of Israel after the exile. Alright, so diaspora is, remember when the exile ends, there's 3 different times where people return to Israel and Jerusalem. Did everybody return? No. They dispersed out into the world. And this great dispersion of the Jews into the world was known as the diaspora. Dispersion of the Jews among the Gentiles. What's a Gentile?
Countries, places around.
Anyone who's not Jewish. So just, yeah, anyone who's not Jewish. So dispersion of the Jews among the Gentiles outside the land of Israel after the exile.
So obviously the exile was a bad thing,
Yes.
but is that like, that's not a bad thing.
Not necessarily.
Diaspora.
Yeah, diaspora is not necessarily a bad thing. What the difficult thing for them was they had to keep their identity, even living amongst those who are not Jewish. So they had to keep their Jewish identity, keep the feasts, and that's the difficult thing. And so this book was written to help those who were outside the land of Egypt, but to keep their identity.
I know nowadays there's like Orthodox Jews and like unorthodox Jews. Was it like way
Well, there's
different?
not unorthodox Jews. There's Orthodox, and there's lots of different, yeah, kinds. So,
Orthodox and then other kinds. But
Yes.
Was it different then?
oh, I'm sure, right? You see the Pharisees and the Sadducees in the New Testament; those would be similar. So yeah, Ashkenazi Jews. You see more cultural Jews. So people who have the cultural identity of Jewish, but they don't practice.
Yeah, aren't there like races that, isn't Ashkenazi Jewish, like, isn't that, not really a race, but like, that's like a.
It's from a place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like here.
So they would have probably started around the diaspora, right? When they left the land of Israel. Absolutely. Good question.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, we're the only Jews like in the world, Israelites.
No, they originally started as Israelites, yes. Whether they went off or not.
Before the exile, were there more?
Correct, no.
So it's called wisdom of war.
It's called what? Wisdom of Solomon. It should be right after Song of Songs. You're still looking for it?
Can you take what content?
Do you have, oh yeah, you're about probably with that. So Wisdom of Solomon is one of the apocryphal books, and it does not exist in Protestant books, which I think is, as we'll see, maybe yours. Alright, so, that actually surprised me, not when I'm reading through this, I'm like, wow, this is clearly inspired by God. So let's get into it. Chapter 2 of the Wisdom of Solomon. We're going to start with chapter 2, verse 16. Chapter 2, verse 16. We are considered by him as something base. All right, let's stop right there. I know, I do this all the time, I'm sorry. I read it half the sentence and I stop. Pay attention to who he is. Who is him in this sentence?
Is it God?
Pay attention. Pay attention. We are considered by him as something base. He avoids our ways as unclean. He calls the last end of the righteous happy. He boasts that God is his Father. Let us see if his words are true, and let us test what will happen at the end of his life. For if the righteous man is God's son, he will help him, and will deliver him from the hand of his adversaries. Let us test him with insult and torture, that we may find out how gentle he is, and make a trial of his forbearance. Let us condemn him to a shameful death, for according to what he says, he will be protected.
That's not what
This is foreshadowing of Jesus.
Of course, this is very clearly Jesus.
it is, Jesus, but is this talking about someone before Jesus that was leading, or is this
I think
the right
it's
before
foreshadowing.
Jesus? Because this is before Jesus was born.
Very much so.
So,
This shows me, at least this shows me this is inspired, right?
Because God speaks to the author, so he's like,
God, yes, the Holy Spirit inspires the author to write. This is clearly
foreshadowing.
inspired, foreshadowed. God is definitely thinking about Jesus. The author might not be, but God definitely is. You might be thinking of perhaps Jeremiah. You might be thinking of the collective people of Israel as a whole. There's a lot of different things the author could be thinking about, but we know this is definitely a direct reference to Jesus. Pretty obvious,
they didn't
right?
know that then, though.
Nope. That's why I would argue this is clearly inspired, right?
My Bible is like a lot of different wording,
Okay?
like, and
They changed the meaning.
I don't know, it says for the verse 16, it ends up being your counterfeit, that kind of thing.
Something base, something counterfeit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say that says roughly the same thing.
Is it chapter?
Chapter 2, verse 16.
Oh, verse 16. That doesn't really.
Did you think it was chapter 16?
Chapter 2, verse 16. We'll get to chapter 16. Not there
I
yet.
thought it was chapter.
So I imagine it just says a lot of the same things, but
Is there really a lot
different.
of
Yeah.
words? Yeah.
You've got a very different translation than most of us do. It's translated from a different source. So, all right, let's go to chapter 3. Beginning of chapter 3. But the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them. In the eyes of the foolish, they seem to have died, and their departure was thought to be an affliction. And they're going from us to be to their destruction. But they are at peace. All right, so this is the beginning of what's oftentimes this, probably half the funerals I do, this is the first reading. Right? Because it's very, right? The souls of the righteous are in the hand of God. It's very peaceful text there. It's comforting.
So is this talking about like when people die and go to heaven?
Yeah, so remember what we said about the afterlife, right? For most of Israel's history, did they have a clear understanding of the afterlife? No. What was the understanding for most of the history?
They go to
Sheol, they go to Sheol, right? The place of the dead. And that's really all they knew. It wasn't very deep. But we see, especially towards the end, during the time of the return and on, we see this development of the understanding of the afterlife and what that means. And we see clear development here.
Speaking of burial, is it like considered to be cremated?
No.
Is it just like?
The church doesn't, the church prefers not cremation for body burials, but it certainly allows for cremation. A lot of the funerals I do are cremations. Because it's, we have well, that's why people choose cremation, because it's cheaper. I think that for two reasons, full body burials are better. One, it affirms our belief in the resurrection of the body. And so the cremated kind of goes against that understanding and belief. Two, I think for people who are mourning someone, having that open casket at the day of the funeral is very helpful for them. Really helps people to, yes, there's a lot of closure that can happen with that. So, and I've seen both ways, and people seem to have better closure when there is a full body and then an open casket at the end.
Well, it kind of depends because like on how they died? Because-
Well, sure, yeah, sometimes you can't have an open casket, and that's just the way it is. And you gotta deal with that when it happens. But if you can have an open casket, that seems to be the best way for the family to, have that closure.
How expensive is like reconstruction?
I agree with that.
What's like the average price difference between cremation and burial?
So it's pretty expensive. Funerals are just expensive, period. So I.
Why is it
It's like a giant casket.
Yeah, the casket's a big price, you have the funeral home, and all the people have to pay for the funeral home, the funeral itself, all that.
I forgot about
You
all
have
that
to
stuff.
pay, you have to pay for the burial plot,
Oh, yeah.
the headstone. It get pretty pricey. A lot of people will,
There's like family plots, right? Like they like buy like a big graveyard, like for everyone.
a lot of people, they take care of their affairs ahead of time, and the person who died leaves the money for their own funeral, so that's what's helpful.
That's what my
A lot of
family.
people plan that way. Anyway, we see this development of the understanding of the afterlife, right? Here in chapter 3, and it's a real beautiful section here. The souls of the righteous are in the hand of God. So I love that. Just want to point out that one. Chapter 14. Let's go to chapter 14.
What verse?
Let's start at the beginning. Chapter 14. Alright, I'm gonna have to move fast. Again, one preparing to sail and about to voyage over raging waves calls upon a piece of wood more fragile than the ship which carries him. For it was desire for gain that planned that vessel, and wisdom was the craftsman who built it. But it is your providence, O Father, that steers its course, because you have given it a path in the sea and a safe way through the waves, showing that you can save from every danger, so that even if a man lacks skill, he may put to sea. So at the beginning, we see this beautiful reflection on seafaring, and that we depend on wood to build these ships to get us through dangerous seas, just as you, Father, are the one we rely on to get us through the waves of our lives. Right? Beautiful reflection analogy. It's very heartwarming and hallmarky channel-y. And then, but it's about to get deep. It's about to get as deep as the water. Like that. It is your will that words of your wisdom should not be without effect. Therefore, men trust their lives even to the smallest piece of wood. And passing through the billows on raft, they come safely to land. For even in the beginning, when arrogant giants were perishing, the hope of the world took refuge on a raft. And guided by your hand, left to the world the seed of a new generation. For blessed is the wood by which righteousness comes. What are we talking about? Noah, right? Talking about Noah. We see that the reflection of Noah, how God saved the people through the ark. What else are we talking about? On the wood of the cross, right? For blessed is the wood by which righteousness comes. We are made righteous through the wood of the cross, through Jesus dying on the cross. That is how we are made righteous. Do they know about Jesus? No, but the drop hints all the way throughout the book about it.
Is the, you like crucifixes, and I feel like a certain type of wood.
No. A lot of them are made out of olive wood, which is found plentiful in the Holy Land.
Yeah, like-
What they would have used.
Probably.
What's like the most common?
I don't know.
I just think everybody, I think it'd just be nicer if everybody would leave my random off-topic questions alone. Leave them to me.
Got one more. 16, chapter 20.
That was funny.
No, 16, chapter 20. Instead of these things, you gave your people the food of angels. What's the food of angels? We've talked about this before. What is the food of angels? What's that? The food of angels. Think about the desert wanderings. The manna. Remember talking about the manna in the desert? And without their toil, they supplied them from heaven with bread ready to eat, providing every pleasure suited to every taste. For your sustenance manifested your sweetness toward your children. And the bread ministering to the desire of the one who took it was changed to suit everyone's liking. Of course, we know that the bread of angels is a reference to foreshadowing in Noah.
Last one.
Which gives us
Like, the,
the word that starts with E.
Eucharist.
There we go.
Wait, where are we?
Oh, my goodness. Chapter 20, chapter 16, verse 20. 16, 20. I thought I was going to read any seconds. Remember this advisory today? Bye. All right, whew, we got to the end. All right, we got one more book in the wisdom literature to go through. And then we're done for the second unit.